Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let us continue with our tafsir of Surah Aal-Imraan bihawlillahi wa quwwatih, and we are on ayah number 165. قال الله تعالى أو لما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أنّ هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم إن الله على كل شيء قدير. We've spoken about this before, but the waw originally should have been first, waw meaning and the hamza is the hamza al-istifham, the question form, and the lamma meaning hina, when. But what happens is that the hamzatul istifham takes priority in the sentence and comes before, because the sentence is now beginning with a question. Otherwise, this happens with the waw, as in this ayah. It can also happen with the fa, as in afa hukm al-jahiliyyati yabghun. Originally it should have been fa hukm al-jahiliyyati yabghun. It can also happen with the thumma, meaning and then, as in athumma idha ma waqa'a amantum bih. Originally it should have been thumma idha ma waqa'a amantum bih. But this is just how the language works. So he says, that is it when the affliction afflicts you. He's referring to the loss at the Battle of Uhud. You say, anna hadha, how can this be? So anna means kayfa, how, when you're confused and asking, how can this possibly be? And Allah Jalla wa Ala replies, say it is from your own selves. This means to say, it is because a group of you disobeyed the Prophet. We're talking about the archers, and this left an opening for the enemies who exploited it, which led to the great loss amongst the Muslimin. So it is because of your own disobedience. Blame your own selves. And he says, indeed Allah is able to do all things. That is to say, that Allah can give you victory. It's not like you lost because Allah is unable to give you victory. He can, but if you are going to disobey orders, then do not be surprised at the results. Just as a side note, there is a narration which says that 70 people of the Sahaba were slain on Yawm Uhud, which is the same number as the prisoners of war from Battle of Badr that the Muslimin set free. And setting them free for the ransom was the wrong decision. And as a punishment, Allah Jalla wa Ala took 70 of the Sahaba the following year on Yawm Uhud. However, we are not sure about the authenticity of this narration. We are simply mentioning it because it has been mentioned. But what is mainstream from this ayah is that the loss was suffered because some of the archers disobeyed the order of the Prophet. Also, when he says قَدْ أَصَبْتُمْ مِثْلَيْهَا, you afflicted twice as many, this means to say that 70 of the Sahaba were slain. However, the year before on the Battle of Badr, the Muslimun took the lives of 70 mushrikeen, but they also took 70 as prisoners of war. So that is double the amount. Now sure, they did not execute the 70 prisoners of war. They should have, but they let them loose. That was the wrong decision that the Prophet undertook. However, the number was still 140 to 70. So it's 2 to 1. So reflecting on this ayah, we take that Allah Jalla wa Ala is rebuking the companions. Even though the companions are the best of the Muslimin, if somebody does wrong, they would deserve rebuke. Because Allah Jalla wa Ala tells them that this affliction is from your own selves, meaning you are the cause of it. Of course, Allah creates all things. The good times and the bad times in life is all a creation of Allah. However, you could be the cause of that, because Allah Jalla wa Ala works by cause and effect. We can also take that when somebody suffers a loss, it is a good idea to remind them of the times of success as well, to keep their mind in balance. Otherwise they will think that they are just complete losers without any success in life. Allah reminds the companions that just the year before you afflicted twice the damage that the mushrikun afflicted on you. So when you do this, it helps to keep the afflicted person from falling into despair. And we may also take that Allah is able to do all things. So this means that our tawakkul needs to be on Allah alone, because it is only Allah who is able to do all things, no one else. But at the same time, victory comes through obedience, not disobedience. Ayah 166. وَمَا أَصَابَكُمْ يَوْمَ الْتَقَى الْجَمْعَانِ فَبِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَلِيَعْلَمَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He says, what afflicted you, meaning of the loss and the death and injury, on the day when the iltaqa, this is from the verb iltaqa yaltaqi, iltiqa'an, to meet, the days when the two groups met. So jama' is a group or a collection, and jam'ani, two of them. Then that which afflicted you was bi'idhnillahi, it was by the permission of Allah, وَلِيَعْلَمَ, the lam ta'lil, so that he may know the mu'mineen, meaning who is the true mu'min from the hypocrite. And this ilm of Allah Jalla wa'ala is his subsequent knowledge, not his antecedent knowledge, and we spoke about that before. And also the idhn, the permission spoken of here, is his idhn kawni, not his idhn shar'i. So that's the universal permission. So anything which happens in reality or in the world is by the permission of Allah, whether it be good or bad. Reflecting on this ayah, we may immediately spot an apparent contradiction. In this ayah he says that the loss happened by the permission of Allah, and in the previous ayah he says that the loss happened because of your own selves. So is this a contradiction? How do we reconcile it? Well, we say both are correct. Anything which happens in the world is by the permission of Allah, good or bad. And yet this particular loss which took place to the Muslimin happened because of their own selves. So this was the sabab. And Allah Jalla wa'ala creates things using cause and effect. The cause could be scientific or otherwise. So a scientific one would be, let's say, you take medicine and you are healed from your illness. Allah healed you, so you were healed by the permission of Allah. What was the cause? The cause was the medication. And it's the same thing here. The loss was by the permission of Allah, and the cause was disobedience to the Prophet. We also find a vital lesson from this ayah, that Allah Jalla wa'ala is consoling the believers. He's saying that this happened by the permission of Allah, and so when you know this, you realize that it could not have happened any other way. So you become content with this bitter reality, or at least you begin to accept it and cope with it much better, rather than falling into despair and trying to drown away your sorrows with alcohol, which is what you find the kuffar doing. And this is one of the great benefits of the belief in qadr of Allah Jalla wa'ala. It's a pleasant side effect of the belief in qadr. One may ask, why would Allah decree such a bitter event? We say there is always wisdom behind what He does, and one of the wisdom is mentioned in this ayah, that He may know who the true mu'min is. Because only in a calamity do your true colors show. If we were all living in pleasure and prosperity, then everyone would act and believe the same thing. You cannot differentiate between the true believers and the fakes. So this is why a calamity is indeed needed and necessary to sort out the true believers from the fakes. Indeed, the same thing happened during the Battle of Ahzab, when the munafiqun said that Allah and the Messenger have promised us nothing but deception. But as for the believers, they increased in their iman and their submission. Let's look at ayah number 167. وَلِيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ تعالوا قاتلوا في سبيل الله أو ادفعوا قالوا لو نعلم قتالا لاتبعناكم هم للكفر يومئذ أقرب منهم للإيمان يقولون بأفواههم ما ليس في قلوبهم وَاللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا يَكْتُمُونَ. So here he continues to give us the wisdom behind the loss. Previously he mentioned that he may know the mu'mineen, and now he mentions that he may know the munafiqeen, because one is known from the other. So in a situation of distress and loss, the nifaq of the munafiqun would become apparent, and the iman of the mu'minun would become apparent. As for the word munafiq, then we have spoken about this before. It comes from the word nafiqa, meaning a tunnel, which the Jerboa digs. When it is said to them, come and fight in the way of Allah, that is to say, to make the word of Allah the highest, أو دفعوا, from دفع يدفع دفعا, which means to push. It could also mean to pay, as in to pay a price for a merchandise, and it can also mean to defend. Here it means to defend. So in other words, if you're not going to fight fi sabilillah, then at least fight to defend your city and your family and your people and your wealth. So the Muslimun are telling the munafiqun to fight or defend. It's narrated that Abdullah ibn Ubay and his followers, they initially set out to march with the Muslimin, but then they returned back. So a third of the whole army returned back and did not fight. And Abdullah ibn Amr ibn Haram, the father of Jabir ibn Abdullah radiyallahu anhuma, told the munafiqun to fight in the way of Allah, or then at least defend their city. They replied by saying, if we knew there to be a fight, we would follow you. Now, what does this mean? It could mean one of two things. Both are acceptable. Firstly, it could mean that they are feigning ignorance, meaning they know there's going to be a fight. They know that the mushrikun want revenge for what happened the previous year at the Battle of Badr. So they know there's going to be a fight. It's not like the mushrikun are coming to Al-Madinah with a bouquet of flowers, but they are feigning ignorance. They are pretending that they do not know there is going to be a fight. Therefore, there is no need to follow the Muslimun out. Another interpretation is that it was clear to everybody that there's going to be a fight, but that the mushrikun were saying, look, we are going to be absolutely run over by the mushrikun. We are just simply marching out to our deaths. This is a suicide operation and not a real fight. But they're saying, had we known that this would be a real fight in which we actually stand a chance of winning, we would follow you. But as it happens, this is simply a suicide mission, and we are not going to embark on such a thing. Either way, whichever interpretation you look at, the bottom line is the same, which is that the munafiqun are cowards. And in this they resemble the followers of Musa alayhi salam, who were too cowardly to fight and conquer Jerusalem. The ayah says that day, meaning the day of Uhud, they were closer to kufr than iman. Now, of course, they are upon kufr. That is absolutely clear, no doubt about it. But what the ayah means to tell us here is that this statement of theirs exposed them to be kuffar and munafiqun. Because would a true believer really utter these words? No. And so therefore it is impossible to hide your hypocrisy forever. It's going to slip up at some point. Allah says they say with their afwah, plural of fahun, which means mouth, they say with their mouths that which is not in their hearts. In other words, they profess to be Muslims, but in their heart there is not a shred of iman. And Allah is better knowing of what they yaktumun, from kitman. We have spoken about this word before. It means to conceal. So reflecting on this ayah, we may take that being cowardly to fight when a fight is warranted is from the attributes of the munafiqeen, which of course we need to steer clear of. We also find that the munafiqun eventually are going to expose their own selves, as we find in this ayah. We find that we have to be careful of the munafiqeen because they are working from the inside. So they have this added deception. At least a kafir who declares himself to be a kafir is not deceiving you. You know where he stands. So we find that we have to be careful and on guard against the munafiqeen, lest they should deceive us from the inside. and sound knowledge of the deen is your only weapon against the munafiqeen. We find that the munafiqun say that which they do not believe. As for the true believer, his inner is the same as his outer. There is nothing but Iman, and there is no discord between what is in his heart and what is expressed on his tongue and limbs. We notice how he says that they say with their mouths that which is not in their heart. So it tells us that these are just empty words. Otherwise, a qawl, a speech, in its truest sense of the word, means that which you say and mean with your heart. That is the qawl or speech in the truest sense of the word. We also take that Allah knows all the beliefs and thoughts of the heart. So whatever evil intentions and beliefs that you harbor will come out into view on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and you will be taken to account for them. Ayah number 168. الَّذِينَ قَالُوا لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ وَقَعَدُوا لَوْ أَطَاعُونَا مَا قُتِلُوا قُلْ فَادْرَءُوا عَنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ الْمَوْتَ إِن كُنْتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. So الَّذِينَ, the ones, referring to the munafiqun, they say لِإِخْوَانِهِمْ, about their brothers, وَقَعَدُوا, and they sat, from قَعَدَ يَقْعُدُ, قُعُودًا, to sit. Now what does it mean to sit? In this context, to sit means to not march out to fight. So you're just sitting behind in your house. So they sat behind in their houses, and they said about their brothers. Now who are these brothers? These are those Muslims who died in the Battle of Uhud. So they are their brothers in terms of lineage, not in terms of deen. They said about those slain brothers, if only they had ata'una, obeyed us, ma qutilu, they would not have been killed. Meaning to say, we turned back, and if they had turned back with us, they would still be alive. So in response Allah says, فَدَرَأُوا, from dara'a yadra'u, dar'an, which means to ward off something, or to fend off. So ward off or fend off from yourselves death, in kuntum sadiqin, if indeed you are truthful in this claim that you make, that these slain brothers could have averted death. Because it is like we've said before, al-hadr la yanfa'u min al-qadr. Taking precautions will avail you not against the qadr of Allah Jalla wa Ala. So reflecting on this ayah, we find the same lessons 154 and the ayat after it. It is that if death is written for you, it will come to you. There's nothing you can do to ward it off. So there is no point in saying if only this had happened or if only that had happened. So the main lesson to note is that saying if only or words to that effect, if it is done in opposition to the qadr of Allah, or it is done as a regret or a grief over what passed you by from success, then this is impermissible. But if it is said as just a khabar or a declarative sentence, then if the declaration is true, then it is permissible. Such as the Prophet saying about Abu Talib, had it not been for me, he would have been in the lowest depths of the fire. In Arabic it says, لولا أنا لكان في الدرك الأسفل من النار. Likewise the Prophet saying about the Hajj, had I not brought along the sacrificial animal with me, I would have made the Hajj at-Tamattu'. But this is not as a regret or a grief of what passed you by from success, nor is it an opposition to the qadr of Allah Jalla wa Ala. It is simply a declarative sentence. You can also say low as a tamanni, something you yearn for, and then the ruling takes the place of what you're yearning for. For example, a poor person says, if only I had wealth, I would give much of it in charity. Then he is rewarded for this intention, and there's nothing wrong with that statement. Whereas if a person says, if only I had wealth, I would purchase some nice alcohol and cigarettes. So this person is then punished for his intention. So using the word low for a tamanni, for something that you yearn for, is permissible if the yearning is for something permissible. Otherwise, it is haram. We may also take from this ayah that Allah Jalla wa Ala tells the Prophet to argue back against the munafiqeen, because he orders the Prophet, tell them, avert death from yourselves if you are truthful. And so from this we may take a lesson that we need to prepare arguments against the kuffar, those who are spreading specious arguments in the land against Muslims or against Islam. Preparing arguments against them is from the guidance of the Quran. In fact, we find it in many places in the Quran where Allah Jalla wa Ala tells the Prophet what to answer against the specious arguments of the kuffar. هذا والله أعلم.